My name is Jesse Scacia with AltDaily, and we're here with Philip Shucet, the head of HRT. He's been gracious enough to sit down with us and answer reader questions and some questions that we have ourselves. So Thank you very much.
Certainly. Glad to do it.
Excellent. Starting out, so what was the environment like that you stepped in here?
It was confused. I mean, at that time, there had been a lot of drama here over light rail and the previous president and CEO, all that consternation. So there had been a lot of churn. I think a lot of people were uncertain about either their own personal future or the future of the agency. It seemed to me that there was a lot of fear, generally speaking, and maybe not fear of any one thing in particular, just fear. I think the good news is we worked our way through most of that fairly quickly.
What have you done to restore public trust in HRT?
Well, I guess I can't answer that question. I can tell you what I think we're trying to do to restore public trust. Tell the truth. Be as transparent as I know how to be in a public agency. Remind folks that we're well aware of the fact that we're not spending our own money. We're spending the public's money, so they have a right to know what we're doing. Trying our best to do what we say we will do. We had hoped to open May 1, and in January we knew we weren't going to, and that same day we made the public aware of that. I think that's the best you can do in those situations. Is be truthful.
Are there new processes in place that weren't here under your predecessor to make sure contracts go through correct bidding processes?
Oh yeah, yes. We have a new procurement manual that we just finished after with the help of a procurement review from the Federal Transit Administration. As you know, in February, the first month I came here, we asked the VDOT Inspector General to come in and look at several areas of our processes. We opened ourselves up to that agency. It took that process took most of 2010, but very helpful. 31 very helpful recommendations came out of that. We have processes in place or procedures or policies in place where none existed before, in some cases, like the bus shelter program that we've never done, to revise policies and procedures that make it clear that we'll follow laws, rules, regulations where necessary. We're not giving away property anymore. We're disposing of it appropriately through an auction process. So a series of things like that.
So you're confident that everything happening here is on the up and up?
Oh, I'm confident that I'm confident that we're doing much more in an organized fashion, in an appropriate fashion. I don't know that I would ever claim to know that every individual's actions every day is maybe hitting right on target, but what I saw from being here, at least the best that I could tell, wasn't, let me say it this way. The issue of whether or not anything was criminal is not for me to answer. With the exception of stealing money from the fare box is a crime, and if we know about that, I don't care if it's 80 cents or $80 or $80,000. We're going to tell the police and let law enforcement make that judgment. Mostly what I saw here were just a lot of things being done very inconsistently. Some things being done very poorly. I think we're doing more things, better things, more consistently, and fewer things poorly. I presume it's all on the up and up, as best I can tell.
We're moving forward.
We're moving forward, no question we're moving forward. Absolutely we're moving forward.
Has there been any talk of changing the name of HRT in the wake of...
You know, that's odd that you mention that. I think just last week I mentioned to someone, I can't remember if it was Tom or who, I mentioned to someone, I said, you know, maybe we ought to think about changing our name. But other than casually saying that, I mean, seriously, that was just a casual comment I just happened to make. To my knowledge, I mean, there hasn't been. We haven't discussed that with the commission.
So our readers at AltDaily tend to be quite bike friendly.
Yeah.
So a couple questions they have.
Yeah.
There seems to be some confusion about how bike friendly the tide is going to be.
Okay.
And then sort of a follow-up, if the tide is going to be extended, either in Norfolk or Virginia Beach or where have you, have there been talks, or would it be in your vision to have bike lanes sort of accompanying the rail, you know, as that construction is done, having the...
Well, let's talk about the last question first. As part of the Virginia Beach study, which is the only other extension study that's underway, as you know, it's paused for a bit, but that was underway. There was consideration of looking at the corridor to see where a bike lane or bike path of some sort could fit within the right of way. I don't remember exactly where that was, but that was certainly a consideration and would be a continued consideration in any other studies. It's not a guarantee that you can do it, but certainly a consideration that would take place as part of the planning for light rail.
Is that just smart planning?
In my judgment, it's smart planning. Absolutely, it's smart planning. I mean, you know, to me, mobility is about everything from a skateboard to a light rail vehicle. I mean, that's the world of today, and I think it's smart to include all of those forms of mobility in your planning. Then you have to make smart decisions, you know, but to include them in the planning, absolutely. Is the tide going to be bike friendly? Well, I sure hope so. You know, we've made provisions for bicyclists to carry on bikes on each light rail vehicle. We're certainly doing our best to promote safety for everyone, pedestrians, bicyclists, as well as drivers. We had a little incident where a bicyclist thankfully ran into a train after it stopped. You know, it's like anything else. Each mode and each operator of each mode has got to be responsible for their own safety. We need to work together on safety, but then we want folks, everyone, light rail operators and bicyclists, vehicle drivers, to be vigilant in terms of watching for signs and signals and obeying those signs and signals.
So you have experience out in Arizona with transportation. You were over at VDOT before this. From a cost-benefit analysis of the amount of expenditure to how many people you're getting from A to B, what is the cheapest way to improve a transportation infrastructure? When you look at rail, improving highways, bike lanes,
that is
hoverboards of some sort.
We could hoverboards would be good. That's a huge question. It's a great question. It's a huge question.
Does it make sense to spend billions on more highway systems?
Sometimes it makes sense to spend money on increasing capacity of highway systems, regardless of the amount of money. Sometimes that makes sense. Let's take the case of a bridge. A bridge connecting two areas is either out of service or severely under capacity or deteriorated. Chances are the smartest thing to reconnect those two communities is to build a bridge. Whether it's $100 million or $1 billion, chances are the smartest thing to do is reconnect it with a bridge. As the capacity of our roadway systems just continues to be gobbled up, whether it's through more cars or more people choosing to drive alone, whatever the choice the individual makes, as that continues to get gobbled up and areas continue to grow up to the right-of-way, the ability to make those highway improvements gets more difficult. So, you know, it's no secret that This system is going to cost over $300 million for 7.4 miles. The projected ridership is 2,900 in the opening year. I think we're going to beat that, but that's the projected ridership.
The projected ridership was up to 7,000 in 2008.
In 2000,
why such a precipitous drop?
I'll tell you why. Because you probably saw numbers at one time that said 6,000 in opening day to 12,000 in the 20-year projection. I have no idea where those numbers came from. That's not what the reports say. That's not what the official study says. Whether or not that's something that someone decided was neat to tell people, I don't have any idea. But it's not the truth. The truth is the tide is projected to carry 2,900 a day in opening year and 7,200 a day in 2030. Those other numbers, man, I can't tell you what those were about. I know they were on our website, and the people that put them on our website got them from someone else. I could spend forever trying to figure that out.
Well, it's a shame that you're held to the standard of imaginary projections.
Well, yeah, it absolutely is. But you know, is it worth it? Well, I think in the long run, you have to look and say, what else are you going to do in this quarter here? At least in the short term, I think we have to push it to be as efficient and productive as we possibly can, and then carefully measure the ridership that it carries. You know, each person on it conceivably is hopefully someone who's no longer maybe driving during the peak hour. Now, if we take your car off the road in the peak hour, maybe somebody else will fill it in, but that gets a little difficult to control.
Mm-hmm. Why is there no bus service directly to the airport?
I don't know. I didn't know there wasn't any bus service directly to the airport. The only thing I can say to that, Jesse, is that through our, well, let's take the history. The history of our planning is not a real great story in terms of where buses run and why. Just this year, for the first time, we're doing a system-wide origin and destination study of our customers. So think about that. Mm-hmm. We've been running buses for what, 40 years? I don't know how long it's been. For the first time this year and next, we'll do a origin destination study for our customers. But my understanding is that the demand for a public transportation route here in Hampton Roads to our airport is not real strong. I mean, our current customer base, out of every 4 people that are on a bus, 3 of them are on a bus because they don't have any other means of transportation, and for the most part, they're going to work. I mean, they're hotel workers, restaurant workers. That's where the focus of our demand has been. Maybe through some of this origin destination work, we'll find out more. But that's all I know.
Let's say you were in charge back when they started planning the starter rail system. Is this where you would have put it?
No.
Would you have put it downtown to the base?
Oh, well.
What would have been the most intelligent starter line?
Well, I think there are some practical things to consider there. You know, Norfolk continued to pursue a light rail line when Virginia Beach didn't. So it would not have been up to anyone in charge of this agency to say, we're going to put it in Virginia Beach. That couldn't happen. You know, a starter is a starter. And I think that, again, from a practical point of view, you know, this piece from Newtown Road to EVMS is the Norfolk portion of a piece of light rail that had been studied for some years back into the 90s. In that regard, I think it's logical to move forward with it. It's routing down, particularly through the downtown area. I haven't spent much time thinking about why it is where it is, because that's where it is. But some of the routing decisions, particularly some of the routing decisions through intersections, keep me up a little bit at night. I think there's some conflict points there that we're going to have to. We are taking measures to make sure those areas can operate as safely and securely as possible.
What do you do if one intersection just turns out to be a disaster?
Well, if
the rails are on the ground.
The rail's on the ground. We can't pick it up and move it. If there were an exceedingly number of conflicts, then we would have to sit down with the city and review reasonable options. Can traffic patterns change? Do we need to use one-way streets?
Do you have your eye on one intersection?
I have my eye on a couple of areas.
Which ones are concerned?
City Hall in Monticello, Charlotte Street, that one-way piece that is between
by Flatiron Park.
Right, around Flatiron, where the entire section is one way, but it's all light rail guideway. Duke and Butte, where that S-turn is from Butte to Duke, that's our tightest. That's the most tightest curve on the whole system.
And you've changed where cars are supposed to stop for a stoplight.
Yes, we have.
Yes, I've noticed cars are having trouble adjusting.
Some are. I have noticed that as well.
Just riding on the tracks and
stopping there. Right. Harbor Park, there's an interesting turn where if you're on Main Street, sort of the inclination is to turn with light rail, and you don't want to do that. But you'll notice at those areas we've put down some of these yellow speed bumps and other lines of methods of demarcation. Down Butte, you see the speed bumps and posts. In some cases, you see bollards, larger posts.
So in the most extreme circumstances, we'll get a crossing bar or something like that, or making a street one way and diverting.
I would think from a practical point of view, in the most extreme sense, that's about all you could do. But that would be if there is a truly unusual circumstance that we can't control. You know, that's why it's important to have these trains moving through downtown now. I mean, this morning at peak hour, we pulled out 6 trains, just like we will in August and September and October when passengers are riding. We're going to be intensely looking at our scheduled runs now, schedule adherence. So I think the presence of these trains downtown is good. You know, from our point of view, we're operating light rail, right? I mean, we're pulling out 6 trains. We're running a schedule. Our light rail op staff is working 24 hours a day. We're not carrying passengers, but we are operating light rail now. Light Rail Now. It's a group, right? Yeah. So,
I'm going to ask you a couple questions from readers and writers and kind of put them together.
Okay.
So I have a writer asking, there seems to be not a great connotation with the bus. Mm-hmm. You know, as you would find in a lot of places, especially among middle-class citizens. Mm-hmm. You have the MAX service that goes to the beach. Mm-hmm. Why is that inferior to a train going to the beach? You're like, could it just, if the idea is to feel connectivity between the region, specifically from our urban core to the ocean front, couldn't we just resell the MAX bus, and change public perception on that?
Maybe. Maybe. And the Virginia Beach study will look at that. That will be an option. And in these studies, the way they're done is you have to develop a baseline case, and that baseline is what's everything you could reasonably do to provide transit service without building the light rail project in this case. So absolutely that ought to be looked at. I mean, here again, I'm not writing a check for it. Nobody here is paying. To the extent we're taxpayers, we're paying for it. But absolutely, that has to be looked at, and it has to be looked at reasonably. In other words, you can't just say, well, today we only have 2 buses going downtown, so obviously that's not an option. No, you've got to develop that out. That baseline has to be cost out. and then it's approved by the Federal Transit Administration. Then you look at the benefit of the cost benefit of providing your light rail service. So that would be looked at in the Virginia Beach study, whether it's MAX or more buses on what's now Route 20 up and down Virginia Beach Boulevard, whatever that might be.
Are there enough parking spaces at the terminuses at EVMS and
Well, we want 2,900 today, and we've got about 800 parking spaces. So probably not. Probably not.
What is sort of best practice for how many spaces per rider?
I honestly don't know. Honestly don't know. You know, I come at this from a highway and bridge kind of background, and I've tried to focus on what I need to focus on to get this thing finished. But I can tell you that at Newtown Road, we haven't concluded anything, but we're in some negotiations possibly to find some overflow parking. We want to do our part to keep cars from parking in neighborhoods, because we know that's not real popular. But there's a large migration of workers that come out of Virginia Beach into downtown Norfolk to work. We don't want them to get at Newtown Road and find a jammed parking lot, because if you can't park at your first spot,
they're just going to keep going.
You're just going to probably keep going. Maybe you'll go to military. Maybe. So we're looking at providing some more parking.
I mean, we're weeks away at this point.
Yeah, we're weeks away.
And so why now are we negotiating for overflow parking?
Well,
I'll
tell you. Yeah, I'll tell you why we were. Because I told our folks, there were some of our folks who were very concerned about overflow parking. This was before we had our existing 4 park and ride lot contracts underway. I'm pretty much a baby step guy, look, let's get our park and ride lots that are part of the project underway. Let's get them to a point where you can tell me with assurance that they're going to be open for when we open. Then we'll talk about overflow parking, because otherwise we'll have an overflow lot and have ignored the construction of the lots that are part of the project. So to some extent that's me keeping first things first. Once I was very comfortable with the status and progress of our park and ride lots, we turned some folks loose to see what they could do on some overflow. But what we're really talking about here is first finding someone that's willing or interested. We were talking with one particular group that asked an outrageous amount, and so that ended up not being productive. Now we're trying to reasonably negotiate with someone else for a couple of hundred additional spaces, and I hope we can. If we can't, we can't.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to sell it harder to start their trip on the bus.
Yeah.
To the
Right.
I'm gonna ask you a tough question.
Okay.
Don't take it personally.
No,
Did you ride the bus to work?
This morning?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I didn't ride the bus to work this morning. I live in Norfolk. I live very near a light rail station, so I can wake up to the clanging of the bell every morning. I've got a 7:30 meeting every morning on Granby Street at a little local coffee shop with construction, and I have taken light rail a couple of times since I'm able to do that from York and get off at Monticello, or I drive. Today I drove to Granby and I drove here.
So what could get you to believe in HRT?
Well, I think we really need to focus on, and it's part of what our efficiency study was doing, and focus on improving our headways. Over 50% of our routes run a 60-minute headway. I'm not saying I'm different. I'm saying I'm like a whole lot of other people that can't get it. I can't say, gee, if I miss the bus, I got to wait an hour to get another one. So that's over 50% of our routes. In our efficiency study that we wrapped up early this year, what we did was make plans to cut out some very inefficient routes, which are going to leave some customers without transit service, and we understand that, but cut out some terribly inefficient routes and invest that money back into popular routes to increase headways, decrease headways down to 15 minutes, or in some, from 30 minutes to 15 minutes, and in a few cases from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. Doing more of that, a lot more of that, is going to be what it takes to really make public transportation a force here in Hampton Roads. I think it can be. We're looking at some ways. These are still things we're thinking about internally to open our system up, possibly to a larger ridership group. But our system is what it is. So there again, we've kind of got to take small incremental steps.
Have to have the long view.
You have to have the long view. You know, I've taken some bus rides for tours to see how the system works and to talk to operators. I rode, before I moved into Norfolk, I rode the MAX a few times and was just, I don't know if the right word is astonished or just sorely disappointed. I think the largest number of passengers that were on the MAX with me, this was about the 7 o'clock time frame out of Silverleaf, was 4. So here's our nicest bus, air conditioned, great seats, wireless service, with 4 people. Meanwhile, some other bus somewhere is older, jammed with folks trying to get to work, and I'm thinking, why don't they have the nice bus? So we're looking, you know, we're working our way through some of these things.
Let me just ask you a couple more.
Yeah.
So right now there's no Wi-Fi on the Tide.
There's going to be.
There's going to be.
There's going to be. And until I read a column by Mike Gruce, I had no idea we didn't have, I took for granted that we had Wi-Fi. I read his column, I said, man, Mike didn't get his information right. I called our guy and said, hey, you know, what's our Wi-Fi service if we don't have any Wi-Fi service? I said, that's just crazy. So we're doing very well with our budget. It'll probably cost us around $30,000, but and it may not be in and operating by August the 19th, but we're going to have Wi-Fi on the Tide.
Okay, good. So last question. You know, I and our readers in the public, we appreciate your optimism, and I think more so we appreciate your honesty and sort of not overselling, but you know, telling us what you know to be true. But you know, moving forward, help us get excited about the future of transit in Hampton Roads. What's the picture look like in 5 years of how this is all going to fit together in a smart way?
You know, I've learned so much in the last year and a half. I wasn't very familiar with public transportation. You know, I'm a kind of a design guy and go out and put your boots on and get it built guy and move on. But I think you can get, I think there are a couple practical things that have gotten me more excited about it as I've learned. Number one is there's not a lot of money for roads and bridges, and there's not going to be. It's not going to be like it was. Put it that way. You know, it's not going to be like it was. In the urban area, which Norfolk is very different than some of the cities around it, you know, look around. If I gave you $500 million, what are you going to do? I mean, you know, the right-of-way expense itself and the public pressure to not gobble up homes and businesses is intense. We know in Hampton Roads, we've known for some time, that if every single occupant driver would randomly carpool once every 2 weeks, all of the current severe peak hour congestion would go away. I think that, you know, once we get the Tide open and can get back to some normalcy in terms of, instead of building a system, operating a system, I think HRT needs to be hammering that home every time we're in. We shouldn't go anywhere casually or in our official capacity and not say that to somebody. You know, what's the value of getting rid of peak hour congestion in Hampton Roads? Forget whether or not it costs $300 million to build the Tide. What's the value of getting rid of that? It's huge. you know, at some point, I think that's going to catch on. But now what HRT needs to be ready to do, though, is then respond. 50% of our service can't be on 1 hour headways, you know. We've got to be good business people and concentrate our most effective service where the majority of folks are. You know, you can't run a bus out Jesse Lane because somebody called and said, I really need you to run a bus out there. You just can't do that. It's hard to tell somebody no because you think of well, this is public transportation. You know, we're supposed to serve anyone that doesn't have access to a car. Well, that's not what public transportation means. The public is paying for you and I to ride, so you have an obligation to make it as efficient as you possibly can. I think we'll get better at that. I think we've got to start measuring not just how many people ride the Tide, but okay, so what? What's that mean? What's the economic value of a person riding the Tide? You know, not to them as an individual, but what's the social economic value of carrying, whether it's 2,900 or 7,000? You know, we're all kind of taking bets on what this opening ridership is going to be, and I'm getting more and more confident we can sort of blow the 2,900 out of the water, I think, in that first year. But what's the value of that? What's that mean economically? You know, social economic value. We've got to talk about that.
Let me throw one more question out. People that believe in the Tide, they believe in multimodal transportation and think that public transport is a moral imperative of sorts. How can they help? How can they help the Tide and just the whole system be successful?
Well, I mean, use it. You know, use it, or let us know why they can't. You know, let us know. Hey, I want to, and I would if you did these things.
So, how do people get in touch?
People can go to our website, and you'll find the email address of every executive here. You know, the at part is hrtransit.org, and it's just your first initial and last name. For me, that's PSHUCET at hrtransit.org.
And you read every email?
Oh, absolutely, I read every email. You ask anybody that sends me a note. I read every email, absolutely. My phone number is 222-6160, and my cell phone number is 339-3745. And I don't miss many phone calls or callbacks, or you know, sometimes someone will email, let's say, excessively, and my response may decrease a bit. But I'm pretty good at staying on top of that stuff.
Well, you've been very gracious, and we appreciate your candor, and we're rooting for you.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, thanks.